Hey friends, how you doing today? I've shared these thoughts on another podcast in the past, but I just feel inspired to share this again now. In 2020, as I've mentioned in the past, Dr. Tam Nguyen, who many of you know, who along with his sister Lynn, runs Advanced Beauty College, and Tam's heavily involved in a lot of different organizations throughout Southern California. He and I and several others had an opportunity to lead a group of students from Cal State Fullerton on a trip to visit family businesses in Vietnam. We had a family business class and we took a handful of those students, about 20 in total of us went to Vietnam over Thanksgiving in 2019. And other stories for another podcast on some of the things there. But one of the things that I did every day is I sat in the bus as we traveled anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 hours to go out and visit different organizations, is I wrote down sort of in a journaling way observations about the 20 or so students that were with us on this trip and just how dazzled and impressed I was with them. And I started sharing with Tam some of the things that I'd been writing about. And he started contributing some ideas that he came up with as well and observations that he had as we traveled throughout Vietnam with these students back in November of 2019. And what has been the end result of that is a book that Tam and I have been working on. It's grown into more than what we'd anticipated, but I want to get back to just the basic 7 things that we observed in these students that we actually have observed, Tam and I, in great leaders, as we've worked with so many great leaders. Many of you who are watching and listening to this fall into that category of people that we know who are considered great leaders. And what we came up with is the 7Q leadership model. And just to tee it off, IQ, intelligence, and EQ, emotional intelligence, are 2 of the 7Qs. So obviously, it's very important to have knowledge and to have wisdom about the area that you work. And certainly, I couldn't go in and be a neurosurgeon because I don't have the IQ and the intelligence to be a neurosurgeon. I've not studied, and you wouldn't want me operating on you. But point being is there's more to success as a leader than just IQ and even emotional intelligence. The other areas that we talk about in the book that Tam and I put together beyond intelligence and emotional intelligence is what we call AQ, or adaptability. What we noticed in these students is how easily they could adapt to situations when something went wrong, how quickly they could adapt. A great leader can adapt to really any situation. As if you're an entrepreneur or a leader or a business owner or run a large company or are a mother or a father, you have seen things, and there will be things tomorrow that will happen that were out of the ordinary and unexpected. And the ability to adapt to those situations is such a huge trait and characteristic that's important. So in addition to the IQ and the EQ and the adaptability, there's also the cultural intelligence. What we saw on that trip was that the kids not only adapted to situations that might have been different than they expected, but also obviously we were in a foreign country where most of us didn't speak the language, and that ability to really identify with and become a part of a different culture is so important, especially in today's day and age where you have employees and customers and vendors and neighbors who aren't from your neck of the woods. They don't speak your language. They were raised in a different culture. Their cultural norms are different. If I fold my arms here in America, it's accepted, but if I do it in Ecuador or other places, it might not be. And so really being able to understand the different cultures in our world, because it is a small world after all. We work in a very, very small world and live in a very small world. The other cue that we noticed and we really paid attention to and we admired in these students and that I admire in great leaders is that social intelligence. Being able to get into a situation and really interact and not feel awkward or uncomfortable. Now, not everybody's an extrovert. I can walk into a networking event and have great conversations with everybody there because I am an extrovert. It's not an introvert extrovert thing. It's really how comfortable are you in a social environment, and not just in networking, but just socially around the people at work, the people in your community. When you're together with your customers, do you have that intelligence level? It really does tie back to an EQ to a certain extent, but socially to be able to really work well in a situation with a lot of different individuals and again, cultures and backgrounds and so forth. The sixth cue that Tam and I have talked about and that I'd like to address right now is what we call RQ, or relationship intelligence, the ability to make every relationship better and stronger. Are you the strong one in the relationship? Are you able to make a relationship better by how you contribute and what you contribute and the value that you bring? So we think the great leaders today really need to have that strong relationship ability to be able to build relationships. I had somebody ask me the other day, are you more transactional or relational? And for me, if you know me, you know 100% I'm much more relational than transactional. Certain businesses, if I go to buy a cup of coffee somewhere, it's pretty transactional. I give them the money, they give me the coffee. But I still tend to go to the places where I can have an interaction with the person. I talk to the barista, the person on the other side of the counter. And while we may not build a relationship and I may never know their name, nor they may never know mine, there still is that feeling of a little bit of a relationship with that person, with that business. So to be able to really build a strong relationship with the people with whom you work, customers, employees, vendors, et cetera, is so important in a great leader. And then the last Q, and there are many, many others, but the last in our book right now is HQ, or humility. The greatest leaders are tremendously humble. They recognize that their team is the power and not them. Ken Blanchard talks a lot about taking that triangle and flipping it upside down. So the employees, and it's not just a Ken thing, I've heard a lot of people, but I've heard Ken talk about it a lot in person over the years, of how important it is to have humility, to be a humble servant leader. So just to recap, again, you've got emotional intelligence, your smarts, what do you know? Adaptability, intelligence, your cultural, your social, relational, and humility. I have a couple of quotes that I want to share with you from this booklet that we put together on each of those cues that I'm going to share with you. I love this quote. If you think education is expensive, try ignorance. That's one of my favorites. Yeah, it costs a lot of money to go get an education, but the cost, and education isn't go get the college degree necessarily, but educate yourself, learn about your industry, learn about your company, your products and services. The ignorance of not knowing is so much more expensive than the time and the money you spend to get that education. A quote that I like on emotional intelligence by Dean Koontz: some people think only intellect counts, knowing how to solve problems, knowing how to get by, knowing how to identify an advantage and seize it. But the functions of intellect are insufficient without courage, love, friendship, compassion, and empathy. For adaptability, Charles Darwin quote, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one that is most adaptable to change." We definitely need to be able to adapt. Like I said earlier, situations change, work environments change, neighborhoods change. Tragedies happen, as we all know, with the recent one in Texas. There is change constantly, and adapting to that change is really one of the greatest strengths that we can have. A great quote that I like when it comes to the cultural quotient, Democritus said, "A wise man belongs to all countries, for the home of the great soul is the whole world." So true. When we took these students to Vietnam, they got off that bus, off that airplane, like they were in their home country. And that was just so impressive to Tam and to me and the other adult leaders that were on that trip, is how quickly they adapted and just felt like they were citizens of the world and not Americans who were touring and traveling through Vietnam, but that was just a citizenship of the world. I think that's so important. The quote for Social by George Bernard Shaw says, "I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can." We are here to serve. I've talked about that a lot on this podcast and in conversations with others. We are definitely here to serve other people. I tell all my students when I teach, I'll be teaching again starting next month at Concordia University. And I'll tell my students on the first day, you are here for other people, not for yourself. We are a part of a whole community, as George Bernard Shaw says, and it's our privilege to do for others whatever we can. We see that in a great leader. A great quote that I like when it comes to the relationship quotient, which, if you know me, that's an area where I live, by Dale Carnegie. There's actually two quotes. One is, "You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you." And that leads me to one of my all-time favorite quotes. Don't be the most interesting person in the room, but rather the most interested. Let me say that again. Don't be the most interesting person in the room, but rather the most interested. When you walk into a room, have genuine interest in other people and they'll feel it and it'll be powerful. Last couple of quotes on the humility quotient, actually the final one by C.S. Lewis. Humility, and you've all heard this one, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. I just want to propose to you that, yeah, there are a lot of other things that a great leader needs to do. But if a great leader can really focus again, as I mentioned, I'll recap one more time, on really obviously the IQ is important, your emotional intelligence, your ability to adapt, your cultural intelligence, your social, your relational, your humility. Those are all just so powerful tools and things that great leaders need to have. I propose that as we strive in each of these areas to get stronger and stronger, that we will become greater leaders. I call this a gratitude podcast. I am grateful for the leaders in my life and the teachers in my life that have expressed and demonstrated those areas. I could go into countless stories about each of those areas, and for the sake of time, I won't. But there's so many people in my life currently and in the past. And the fun thing is, I know there are people coming up in my life that I don't know yet that are going to become some of my favorite people. And it's going to be because they have these traits. I pray that you'll look to those areas as well. Where are you strong? Where can you improve? And if I can help you in any way, let me know. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you for your time. I know there are a lot of podcasts that you could watch and listen to, and I appreciate that you took the time today to listen to and watch this one.